Yeah.
It's like this weird thing where like, people they are look at the Fast and Furious, how diverse that cast is. It's successful, and so
and
it's weird when people don't want to make these movies, right? And then you just go, guys, look at the history of this. I mean, and also, but like, you know what I like too about this movie in the 90s, right? Watching this movie, it was weird for me because at 14, you also had Barbed Wire come out. So you have two completely different heroes. You have the highly sexualized hero, and then in this one, you have Sam Cain, and Charlie is just a badass. And she does flash him. She does have like the torture scene, but it's not anywhere near Barbed Wire. And so you watch these movies and you're used to, I mean, I love Sandra Bullock in Speed, right? I love Jamie Lee Curtis in True Lies. But in the 90s, we didn't, Helen Hunt and Twister, like they were just running from Twisters. But you
tornadoes shit.
You didn't have this.
Nah, at all. And I think that was the thing that drew me into it was, like you said, you didn't have that. You didn't see that. And yes, there were strong, female leads and of course in other movies, but not this way, not especially in the 90s, like not for an action movie, you know what I mean, for a hard up action movie. Like one of my favorite scenes is when they're in the terminal, the bus depot, the train station, and then they start getting shot at, and then they're running through the building, and she gets the gun and they jump out the window and she shoots into what? That was one of the dopest sequences. Like, come on, like how badass is that? She's jumping through the windows, all her like muscle memories coming back, and you see her slowly transform, but she's not all the way there yet. She's not fully there, but that muscle memory's kicking in, and she's just like, oh wait, I got this. I remember, I'm jumping through the ice, bam. Such a dope sequence, and that movie is like I said, it just, the pacing to it is so good. Like right after that, they jump into the car with my man, Brian.
Brian Cox, Nathan.
They go to his farm, and then she's slowly starting to pick things up, and he's starting to remind her of shit, but like it's not all there, but it doesn't stop. The action keeps going and it keeps building. So like it is a testament to kind of 90s action cinema, and it is, not just like, you can't talk about this movie without talking about all the other co-stars in it as well. You know what I mean? Brian Cox, Craig Bierko, David Morse, like it was just such a good, well-rounded cast, and it was just a testament to 90s action, man. It's one of my favorite friggin' movies. Like I said, you can't talk highly enough about the movie. The fact that it did well and they didn't do a sequel is so disheartening too, because it had such a perfect setup for a sequel.
Renny Harlin wants to do a sequel now where it's her daughter, and she teams up with Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson said he was 100% down. So I wonder if they would make it, because Renny Harlin's living in China right now. You know his Skip Trace movie with Johnny Knoxville and Jackie Chan made $150 million worldwide?
Really?
Yeah. So he's still making movies out there that are popular. So it's pretty interesting, man. He's and going back to the movie, I gotta say one of my favorite parts is when she's rescuing Mitch Hennessy, and he's laying in this kind of pit and just bloodied and beaten, and all you see through are these slits from the metal grate, and you just hear her murdering all these men, and then she saves him. It's such a badass moment, and I like, I like Craig Bierko because his Timothy character isn't too over the top 90s cool.
Yeah.
He walks a tightrope. Sometimes he almost falls on the side of you're way too 1990s.
Yeah.
I still like him. And then I think one thing I really like about Brian Cox, he can just hand it when he's talking about the dog licking its butt. You're like, Brian Cox is the only person who could do this. And David Morse also sorry, before I know I kind of cut you off there, but David Morse, I love he's a big dude. And I love him in The Rock, right? And I love him in this role because he's a big guy who seems very nice, but he also exudes menace.
Yeah, and it's like even when he was nice, you knew something was up with him. I feel like all his roles he kind of plays those type of dudes where like you don't quite know what's going on in that guy's head, but you know it ain't good. So it's just kind of funny. Like I said, that cast is just a testament to like the movie overall. What made the movie good.
No, I'm with you, and I also got to say too, man. Like I've been reading a lot about this. I like to go into these reviews, reading a lot of user reviews, and I don't know. The critics weren't too kind to this movie. They were like, Geena Davis didn't have to do all her stunts. This blah blah blah. But I've noticed some people were complaining, and this is what I hate. Yeah, so Renny Harlin did want to make he still wants to make a sequel. So as of last year, Sam Jackson's still in. Renny Harlin's now living in China. That movie Skip Tracy made was Chinese funded. It made 150 million worldwide, which is bonkers. And he wants to make a movie about Charlie's daughter, Samantha's daughter, is in trouble, and it's up to because Renny and Geena Davis were married and they got divorced, so I don't know if they'd want to be back together. But then he wants Sam Jackson to come back and help him.
That could be a good movie, right? And you know what? And it's just like it's kind of like those movies, like The Professional, right? It left you wanting more, right? The Professional. To this day, I'm surprised no one took the chance to write a sequel to that movie where, you know, she takes up the mantle. And you see Tarantino is kind of like hinting that he's finally going to do this Kill Bill 3. Like, it's been ruminations and rumors in the works that this movie is finally about to get, you know, produced. But again, like same with Long Kiss Goodnight, you know, it would be dope if it was written well, and I feel like that's what it really is going to boil down to, like the writing, the script. As long as there's a good script, I would love to see like a kind of a classic return, kind of like how they did in Atomic Blonde, you know, with the action, a lot more practical, because a movie like that deserves practical effects. I don't believe it doesn't need the Fast and Furious treatment. You know, we don't need all the CGI blood. Just keep it practical and just make it a dope action film. Because I feel like that's what a lot of the more modern action films are missing, is kind of that practical kind of thing. And you see Netflix has been doing it a lot lately with their movie releases. So hopefully if it does get, you know, made, they can kind of stick to that format of kind of just guerrilla friggin', you know, 90s style filming, practical effects, good stunts. And I think it could be a really good movie. I think that could be a really, really freaking good movie.
I'd like to see Geena Davis reprise her role.
Who wouldn't?
I mean, it's just, I know that Renny wants to go with her daughter, but I would love to see a similar vibe with Geena Davis. I mean, let's say there are still people out there who want her dead, or something happens. Like, I would love to see her reteam with Sam Jackson and then just have her go out and crush some folks. Like, that's it's different. Like, we've never been given, I'm not quite sure how old Geena Davis is now, but she's got to be like in her 50s. So I would love to see that. Why not? We get 70-year-old Stallone, and I love all the Expendables movies running around. Why not give us Geena Davis running around crushing some people? I have a quick question for you, and I want to see what you think. Mm-hmm. I was going through a lot of reviews for this movie, and I was kind of coming across, and in prior conversations with people, it seems like you watch Hobbs and Shaw, and there's a moment when Dwayne Johnson is holding two chains, and he's attached to a truck and a helicopter, and he's pulling them together. In the real world, his arms would be ripped off. In a lot of these movies, right? One guy kills 30 people. One guy does this. And in Old Boy, he wipes out 30 dudes. Mm-hmm. And then I noticed and I'm not using your past example, so this isn't me reacting to what you just said, but then other people watch movies with like female-led action heroes. Mm-hmm. And they're fine with The Rock's arms not being pulled out of his sockets, but they also are like, there's no way a 100-pound woman could win that fight. And it seems very, what's the word? Reductive. Yeah, it seems very reductive. So you're totally fine with a character throwing somebody around like a beach ball. So there's a scene with me and you, and I just pick you up and I throw you 30 feet. Everyone's like, ha ha ha. But if a woman throws me 30 feet, they're like, oh, that would never happen. So I do think it's a weird thing though that I've noticed where they're like, that wouldn't happen. I think it's very reductive. It seems sort of maybe, you know, it seems like sexist, I would say almost.
It's very sexist. It is very.
to just say, okay, that person, that, I am fine with this person carrying a tree, a literal tree, but I'm not fine with, 100-pound woman doing a hurricanrana on somebody and flipping him. And like, that's gotten really old to me, man. And do you think that's just people? I mean, do you think that's just people aren't primed for that? Like, people aren't. I don't know. I think we're so used to Jean-Claude Van Damme being blinded and throwing spin kicks that, and it's just weird how people can accept one but not the other. Does that make sense? And it gets pretty annoying. I don't understand that. Like,
I don't either. And I think the biggest, thing when it comes to that, right? When you look at movies, to me, like, where you have like just badass females just kicking ass, just like dudes, right? Atomic Blonde. To me, one of the dopest, some of the dopest action sequences, to me, just as good as John Wick. Didn't get nearly as much love as John Wick did in the theaters, right?
Yeah. Davis did a ton of her stuff for this, which is a Renny Harlin staple, which I love.
Yes. And again, I said this earlier, she doesn't get enough props for, like, really, to me, I feel like this came out in 96. I guess they came out around the same time. So I guess you could put her and Linda Hamilton in that kind of era of kind of just women just doing it, like, super going hard as hell on film in the action movies, just as hard as the dudes doing it back then, as the Stallones and the Wesley Snipes and the Schwarzeneggers, and holding their own. Out since then, Hollywood has kind of been afraid to kind of it's like they do the movies, but then they don't market the movies the same way they market these other movies, right? So if you look at the level of marketing like an Expendables got, come on, who doesn't love a cheesy fucking action 80s movie? And the Expendables was that. It was, like I said, it was billed to be this cheesy kind of, updated 80s action flick with all your favorite action stars from back in the day, right? So when you went into that movie, you went into it with this expectation of, like, super over the top, nonsensical action. Expendables is set in a real world, but it's like a really fictional world.
It's not a real, it's a splinter dimension.
Yeah. It's like Earth 626 or some shit, right? It's this version of Earth that doesn't really exist. So you don't really take things in it as serious.
And it's just, you know what I would like in Long Kiss Goodnight too? So people go into Geena Davis's house and they're like, be careful of her, she's deadly. And then they see Geena Davis, and then I think, like a lot of people do, in what patriarchal areas, they kind of take her for granted. They're not worried. And then they just catch a throat to the knife. A knife to the throat. It's, I think that'd be an interesting way to play it, is just people really not taking it seriously. And I think that could be an interesting theme to be explored, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And I mean, playing off of that, the idea of, people not taking her serious, but her at the same time not feeling like she has to prove anything.
Because I got you.
That she could wreck shit if she wanted to, But I always feel like a lot of times it's those little quick burns, or those little, like, not the full-fledged takeout sometimes, but those little, like, check yourself before you wreck yourself, really wreck yourself, like, moments that I could see her doing just because of Charlie Baltimore's character, right? She's this little, sarcastic, smart mouth.
Funny. Wow. Did you get whiplash from that?
Yeah, like, right? Like, that's such another good scene, like, when she just drives around the block like 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
And she's just on the floor. And she
laying there. Oh, that's
she's just laying there.
Yeah, I love her as a teacher, too, when he checks out that runner and he's like, woohoo! She's like, what joy could she get from you yelling woohoo at her?
Yeah.
And then he's like, you could see her coming from around the block. You'd have time to comb your hair. And then he's like, I don't think you need me anymore. She boots him out and he just lays there while she drives around the block. I mean, there's so many. Actually, how about this? Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into our favorite scenes of this movie. How's that sound?
All right, yeah, let's do it.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. And Kiyon, You know what happens when you make an assumption?
No, I do not. Please tell me.
You make an ass out of you